They keep trying to make Pete happen. It's not going to happen. They keep trying to make Pete Buttigieg a presidential contender. Okay, fine, mayor of South Bend, Indiana. We'll play this game. He sat down for an interview with NPR. Is that still a thing? NPR? What's the P stand for? Oh, I can guess. Anyway, we'll break down his interview and, well, eviscerate what a moron he is. Also, when is it okay to misidentify the race of an African American here in the United States? When they're a mass murder suspect. CNN properly mocked for their behavior last night. We're going to show you the whole progression of that incredibly tragic story out of Manhattan. And speaking of tragic stories, I know you've seen the story out of Cincinnati, a brutal beating of innocent people. And the police chief in Cincinnati, she knows who's really to blame for all of this. You people on social media who are talking about it, that's who. We'll get to that story and a whole lot more coming up right now. We're brought to you by Birch Gold. My name's, what was that accent? We're brought to you by, is this hee-haw? We're brought to you by Birch Gold. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. The Trump team is busy as bees with all their tariffs and trade deals and trying to fix the Fed. They got a lot on their hands, all right? It's difficult for them to take your personal finances into account when they're trying to do what's right for the whole country. You have to do that. And that's why tens of thousands of Americans are buying gold right now. Where are they buying it? From Birch Gold. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. Some central banks out there are bolstering demand for gold by buying it in record quantities. Why are they all buying gold, huh? You may be able to find some peace of mind right now with gold. Birch Gold makes it extremely easy to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. Just text my name, Larry, it's the name of the show, to 989898. Birch Gold's going to send you a free info kit on gold. No obligation, just useful information. What do we know about Birch Gold? I'll tell you what. They got an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. They got tens of thousands of happy customers. They're huge supporters of our program. It's time for you to take control of your savings today. Text the word Larry to 989898. Get her done today. Again, what's with the hee-haw accent? Stop it, Larry. Let's just move on. Pete Buttigieg. Seriously. He thinks he can be president. After all, he was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. So why not? Then he was Secretary of Transportation. That was a complete disaster. And now he's quietly becoming a leading contender for the Democrats' nomination in 2028. And so he sat down with National Public Radio, gave him an interview, and I want you to see some of it because I've got some thoughts. Here it is. It's a video interview for NPR, Morning Edition. Watch.
When President Trump says something like no boys and girls sports, which is a phrase that they use, it sounds like you're not signing on to that.
I think that chess is different from weightlifting, and weightlifting is different from volleyball, and middle school is different from the Olympics. So that's exactly why I think that we shouldn't be grandstanding on this as politicians. We should be empowering communities and organizations and schools to make the right decisions.
When President Trump says something like,
so let me say this in completely unequivocal terms. Pete Buttigieg is a bullshit artist, and he is bullshitting you. You can smell the bullshit a mile away, and that entire 30-second clip was nothing but a heaping, smelly, hot, steamy pile of the aforementioned bullshit. And I want to break down every little bit of this to expose what a transparent, hypocritical liar he is. First of all, you just saw his answer to that question. Boys and girls sports, where do you stand? Can you tell me now where he stands? This was well rehearsed. It was market researched. He practiced it in front of the mirror in his bathroom before he showed up at the studio for this interview. But can you tell me what his position is on the radical transgender agenda to ruin women's sports? What does he believe? What does he stand for? What would he do as president? Can you tell me? No, that's the point. Because why? Because he's a bullshit artist. That's why. Now, let's start with the question.
When President Trump says something like no boys and girls sports, which is a phrase that they use, it sounds like you're not signing on to that.
It's a phrase that they use. And I love that it's assigned to President Trump. This is the vast majority. 80% of the American people believe in this policy. State after state after state right now is changing. The International Olympic Committee just changed their policy. Most sports now recognize this policy, but no, it's Trump. Trump has to come up with it. It's all Trump's fault, right? But understand how the left thinks. I feel like I'm sort of a translator sometimes for leftist thought. When he said that's a phrase they use, you realize, of course, that people who advocate for radically changing women's sports in America and reorienting Title IX provisions so that a woman or the definition of sex is blown up into all of the pronouns and all of the genders, and that a boy who identifies as a girl can then play in girls' sports. The people who support that policy, they would not agree that that is a boy in women's sports or a boy in girls' sports. So when they say, oh, when Trump says no boys and girls sports, that's a phrase they use. What he means is they don't believe that it is a boy playing in women's sports. They believe that it is a girl. It's just a, different kind of girl. It's a transgender girl, but it's not a boy in girls sports. It's a girl in girls sports. It's just a girl with a penis, you see. They don't like to say, like I would say, it's a boy who identifies as a girl. Nope, can't say that anymore. That's hateful. That's bigoted. It buys into the false binary construct, don't you know? And you can't say, okay, well, it's a, you want to call this person a girl? Fine, girl, but it's a girl with boy body parts. Nope, they don't say that either, because they don't want to say that a penis is, in fact, a boy body part. It's just a body part. And both boys and girls can have a penis. You see? A lot of beeping going on. Sorry. So first, this question is set up with this jaundiced, skeptical, oh, Trump says boys and girls sports. That's a phrase they use. We would never use that here, not at NPR. All right, so there's the question. That's the setup. You're not buying into it. So this is a great opportunity for Pete Buttigieg to tell people that he wants to vote for him as president of the United States, where he stands on this highly important, vital, and controversial issue. All right, so here's the Tower of Strength and Courage to tell us where he stands on ruining girls' sports with biological men.
I think that chess is different from weightlifting.
What does that mean? Is he trying to say that boys identifying as girls, girls identifying as boys in chess is different than weightlifting? Okay, well, sure it is. Of course it is. So what? Now, it appears, if you look at the data, that boys do have a biological advantage in both of those sports. I was shocked to learn this myself about chess. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but apparently it might have something to do with the boys trending more to trying chess and being more committed to it and more obsessed with it and practice more with it. I don't know. It's not for me to decide. But if you look at the data, if you look at statistics, boys tend to excel better than girls in chess. Obviously, same with weightlifting. So, yes, you're right. Chess is different than weightlifting, but if boys have an inherent biological advantage than girls, and a boy identifies as a girl and plays in that sport against biological girls who are not as advantaged in that sport, then actually there is no difference, Pete. But he goes on.
And weightlifting is different from volleyball.
Weightlifting is very different from volleyball. Thank you. I would love it for the NPR guy, who's still cashing our checks, by the way, to actually ask this guy, what the hell are you talking about? Can you explain your point? Okay, how is it different? Why is it different? I'll tell you a big difference why it's different. Obviously, the competitive edge is major, but also there's a difference between weightlifting and volleyball because volleyball is a team sport and you're competing against a person head to head. Weightlifting, it's just you against the weights, right? And whoever's best is best. There's still a competitive advantage. But when you play volleyball, little girls are in danger of serious physical injury if there's a boy on the other side of the net. spiking the ball at 120 miles an hour at your face. So yeah, it is a little different. I'm so glad you're smiley about it as you tell us that. Fine. Okay, you're right. They're all different. What do you believe? What's your position, Pete?
And, middle school is different from the Olympics. So
Middle school is different from Olympics. Now, again, I'm reading into this, but what I believe he is implying here, or at least to be fair, what I'm inferring from that non-response response is that, listen, if boys want to compete as girls at middle school or girls want to compete as boys at middle school, that's not a big deal. It's middle school. The Olympics, obviously, that's a big deal. But at middle school, why should we stop it? Who are we to judge? Just let the kids play. Which is fascinating. And I'm sure that most people thinking on the surface level, and just first step kind of consequences to your policies and decisions, you might buy into that crap and think, yeah, that's true. It's not like it's the Olympics. Just let them play, right? But see, you're a little deeper than that. You think 2, 3, 4, 5 steps down the line, don't you? And here's what I would say if I were interviewing Mayor Pete, if he had actually sat for an interview and he said that to me, I'd say, yeah, whoa, hold on. You're right. Middle school is different than the Olympics because the vast majority of athletes in the Olympics, they're adults. And they have some sort of ability to stand up for themselves and defend themselves and be assertive. They have some level of, authority over themselves. And also there's a pretty good coaching management structure at the Olympic level in sports to oversee issues. You know how that's different than middle school? In middle school, you're talking about my 12-year-old daughter having to disrobe as she's going through puberty and be naked in front of a boy, a biological male. And there's no one there to look out for her. She can't defend herself. She can't stand up for herself. She can't protect herself because she's 12. So yeah, you know what, Mayor Pete? There is a big difference between the Olympics and middle school. If anything, our girls should be protected even more in middle school. Keep the boys out of the locker room and keep their sports pure. By the way, one other point. Every Olympian competing at the Olympic level, they were once in middle school. And they have the right to be able to compete at a fair field, a fair, even playing field when they're in middle school, so they can realize their dreams to become an Olympian someday. The nerve of him to just diminish, it's just middle school. Screw you, Pete. What sport did you play in middle school, pal? We're only 15 seconds into this video. I mean, do I have a little bit to say about Pete and this duplicitous, obnoxious load of, did I call it bullshit yet? Yeah, that's what it is.
So that's exactly why I think that we shouldn't be grandstanding on this as politics.
We shouldn't be grandstanding on this. He worked for an administration that had Transgender Appreciation Day on Easter, I believe, and invited all of these transgender people to the White House, put out social media videos, celebrated it. Dylan Mulvaney got to interview Joe Biden. We politicians shouldn't be grandstanding. You grandstand plenty on this issue and raise plenty of money, too, from the Human Rights Commission, as well as other interest groups and very powerful gay people in the entertainment and tech sector. That's who's financing this guy's campaign. We shouldn't grandstand on this. I'm sorry, what flags are flying in front of your house, pal? What flags are flying down Main Street of South Bend, Indiana when you were mayor? What flags were flying at the freaking White House during your administration? What flags flew out in front of the Department of Transportation when you were secretary there? We shouldn't grandstand. You've done nothing but grandstand on this issue. A little bit more.
Politicians, we should be empowering communities and organizations and schools to make the right decisions.
Communities and organizations, you know who those communities and organizations are. LGBTQI++ activists are the communities and organizations, and local Governments, is that the last word that he said after communities and organizations?
And organizations and schools to make the right decision.
Schools. Yeah, schools should be able to make the right decision. He literally worked for the president who rewrote Title IX and through the DOJ and through the Department of Education tried to pressure schools to allow boys into the girls' room, girls into the boys' room across the board. He literally worked for the administration that did not allow local schools to come up with their own policies on this. What a duplicitous, lying jerk. And that's just one part of this interview. I've got more. Pete Buttigieg wants to be president.
You never had a moment before that famous presidential debate where you worried about whether he was all there?
There were moments where I thought, he's looking tired today, or where I noticed that he was aging. But there was never a moment where I thought, this decision, this policy, or this process is going worse or is wrong because of the fact that he's old.
So Pete Buttigieg, in that 20-second clip, just announced to every voter in America that he is basically unqualified and ill-suited to be president of the United States. Because everything that you and I could see on television or on social media about the performance and mental and physical and cognitive diminishment of Joe Biden over the last 5 years of our lives. We all saw it sitting in our living room or looking on our smartphone. He couldn't see it while sitting in the cabinet room or while meeting with the man in the Oval Office. He is not equipped to be president of the United States if he can't make that basic assessment of a human being. Can you imagine him negotiating with a foreign adversary? He has absolutely no observational skills, no instinct, or hear me out. He's lying. He's lying to you. Either way, I think it might disqualify him to be president. Here's some more Pete.
I was talking the other day to a Democratic member of Congress representing part of New York City who said to me, essentially what you're saying, Mamdani in many ways is the future. He knew how to campaign. He's doing everything right. There's a lot to learn from him. And this lawmaker said, I haven't endorsed him yet because I have a lot of Orthodox Jews in my district. What do you make of that contradiction?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of distinguishing between tactics and ideology. And I would say, he's further left than I am. But also, I think that what he's been able to do is something that our party ought to learn from.
Okay, as usual, I like to break this down and give you my observations. So real fast here, the NPR host, by the way, if I may just pause for a second. This is NPR's morning show, morning edition. And this interview is a video interview in a set, not a radio studio. And it's not a radio interview. It's a video interview. Hey, NPR, can you hear me? NPR, you still there? I'm sorry. How are all of those poor farmers in rural West Virginia and Podunk, Texas, going to be able to hear this interview when they have no access to any kind of streaming devices or broadband? Why would you have an interview with a presidential candidate and put it on a video streaming platform? I thought that you were vitally important to rural farmers in the middle of our country who only have radio and FM or AM bands to be able to find out what storm and weather conditions are. You lying hypocrites at NPR. Boy, that's a nice set too. Man, our tax dollars. You don't know how galling it is for me to do this professionally every single day. What I do, morning radio, just like these guys, and then a video streaming show where I don't get any tax subsidies. I don't get any payouts. No one pays for my budget out of tax dollars. And they pick my pocket in my taxes to help pay for that beautiful set. Multi-cameras. Nice mics, too. I know how much those microphones cost. And then I got to compete with them. Jerks. All right, sorry. Let's go back to the NPR host here. As he asked this question about how, this Democrat, he's got great fondness for Mamdani, but he hasn't endorsed him, because of those pesky Jews.
In many ways is the future. He knew how to campaign. He's doing everything right. There's a lot to learn from him. And this lawmaker said, I haven't endorsed him yet because I have a lot of Orthodox Jews in my district. What do you make of that contradiction?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of distinguishing between tactics and ideology. And I would say, he's further left than I am.
This is the point where if he were on my beautiful sets that isn't paid for by your tax dollars, I would lean forward and say, oh, hold on, hold that thought. He's more further left than you are on what issue in particular? How is Mamdani more left than you, Pete Buttigieg? What do you disagree with him on? What is he wrong about? What makes him more extreme than you? Wouldn't you like to know that? That would be a really great thing in this interview if you could actually find out. By the way, I don't think they are different in any way whatsoever. And Pete would certainly not lay that out there. You think Pete Buttigieg trying to become the nominee for the Democrats wants to start today in July of 2025 telling Democrats how he differs from Mr. Mamdani, the communist in New York? Oh, hell no. The last thing, but he's able to say that Mamdani's more left than he is without actually giving any specifics or details. Boy, it's good to be a Democrat on NPR, isn't it? All right, and then there's this.
But also, I think that what he's been able to do is something that our party ought to learn from.
What he's been able to do. Can we just break down what he's been able to do? I just love that. Oh my gosh. I disagree with Mamdani on a lot of issues, but what he's been able to do, what he's achieved, we can all learn from that. You realize what he's done so far. You realize what Mamdani has achieved. It boils down to one thing. He beat another Democrat in a primary. That's it. That's his achievement. That's the big thing he's done. He beat another Democrat. And here's Pete Buttigieg. He's so smart, that Pete. Oh, he's so wise. Well, what he's been able to do, we Democrats can learn from it. Well, Andrew Cuomo could certainly learn a little bit from it. All this guy has done, Mamdani, is win a primary against another Democrat, and he got 42% of the vote. And suddenly he's the second coming. Suddenly every Democrat should follow what Mamdani does, because don't you want to beat other Democrats with 42% of the vote? Oh, it's just such drivel. And he's being, they praise this guy like he's the second coming of national politics for the Democrat Party, Pete Buttigieg. He's so smart. He's so good. He's the best of us. Do you see what a paper tiger he is? Do you see what a charade this is? He's so two-dimensional. It's all pablum. It's all, talking points. It's as thin as air and deep as a creek.
It's that when you have an autocrat in power, he can get away with appointing incompetent people over very important things in our lives. So right now we have the Secretary of Defense in charge of defending the American people, who was accidentally texting military strike information to journalists. We have the person in charge of American public health, who is a quack who doesn't believe in medicine, and now measles is on the rise in America.
Okay, so incompetent people. I'm not going to dignify the attacks on the two cabinet secretaries. They can defend themselves. Although it is interesting to call Pete Hegseth an incompetent Secretary of Defense when he just oversaw one of the most complicated and successful military strikes in recent history with the bombing of the Iran nuclear facility. But to set it aside for a minute. This is Pete Buttigieg calling a member of the Trump cabinet incompetent and saying that Trump can get away with it because he's an autocrat. I love that they're changing words now. He's not a fascist anymore. He's not a Nazi. He's not a totalitarian. He's not an authoritarian. Now we're going with autocrat. It'll continue to morph. They throw things against the wall. They focus group it. They see what works. This guy is a product. He's like a product that's been put together by some corporation of people who do surveys and figure out what Americans are looking for. That's why he's got the beard all of a sudden. But sure. It's the Trump administration who have this incompetence, where the Biden people, they were all the professionals. Well, let's examine side by side a Trump cabinet official, a cabinet member, with a Biden cabinet member. Let's just pick one cabinet secretary at random. How about, I don't know, let's go with Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation. Okay, we'll compare him to Biden's Secretary of Transportation. Oh, it's Pete Buttigieg. Wow, man, this makes sense. Okay, let's see how Duffy's doing compared to Buttigieg.
What could $80 billion have gone toward other than these sort of woke racist policies?
Well, that's a great question. So, the American Society of Civil Engineers says we've got a $684 billion backlog just to maintain our existing highways. I once ran a $48 billion program in transportation. We built 15,000 transportation projects. So even adjusting for the inflation of the last administration, $80 billion could have easily fixed or built 15,000 intersections, bridges, transit hubs, or runways.
It's extraordinary. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy weighed in on this scandal earlier this week. Here's what he had to say.
Well, Rob, I think this is the first time that we're seeing the media really report on what happened over the course of the last 4 years under Buttigieg and Biden.
Yeah.
There wasn't a focus on building big, beautiful projects that connect people. It was really about spending infrastructure money to drive an ideological agenda, whether it be the green agenda or the diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda.
There you go. So that's a good side-by-side comparison. What's happening under Duffy and what the plans are in the Trump administration in the Department of Transportation versus 80 billion of your dollars spent on DEI programs and more money spent on green initiatives, which may be really wonderful for the environment, but that's really more of an EPA thing, isn't it, than the Department of Transportation? But Buttigieg wanted to spend that money over at DOT because then he could brag about it when he ran for president. Oh, and the money he spent on DEI, well, it's because he needed to boost up his numbers with the black vote. You see, Pete Buttigieg has always underperformed with black voters in the Democrat Party. He did very well in the Iowa caucuses in 2020. He won them, in fact. He did okay in New Hampshire. But then when they got to South Carolina, well, he tanked because black voters aren't too keen on Pete Buttigieg. So while he was the Secretary of Transportation, he funneled $80 billion to groups that focus on DEI, diversity, and, well, racially focused agenda items. And the latest polls are out. And Pete Buttigieg, though he is leading the field right now for the nomination in 2028, his current polling number with black voters in the Democrat Party is 0. 0. He is actually polling at 0 with black voters. I would guess that I am polling better with black voters right now in the Democrat Party than Pete Buttigieg is. Or at the very least, we're tied. And I didn't spend $80 billion on DEI programs. So even that he couldn't do right. But one more point from your Secretary of Transportation, because we're just doing a comparison, because Buttigieg just maintained that the Obama cabinet is full of incompetence. So again, transportation, how are things going with our secretary?
A couple months ago that we had an outage with our telecom. That's been fixed. We were rebuilding a runway there. That's been fixed. But we continue to have, staffing shortages with our air traffic controllers. That coupled with weather that happens in the summer will create these delays. I was coming back from Nashville last night. I was delayed 3 hours because of weather. And so, again, I can't control that part of it. But what we are doing is we were given $12.5 billion as a down payment in the big, beautiful bill. We are going to rebuild our telecom network. We are pulling every string to get more air traffic controllers trained up, more air traffic controllers that are trained to stay on the job and not retire. And so this is going to take us some time. The problem, Stuart, was that the last administration, Buttigieg and Biden, they knew this was a problem and they did nothing to fix it. Before I got this job, President Trump said, we are going to fix our air traffic control system and we are going to make it the best in the world and function for the American people. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, but the people you're hiring to fix the air traffic control system, how diverse are they? Are you being inclusive? There's our side-by-side comparison. Thanks, Pete Buttigieg. Thanks for bringing up the competency of the members of the cabinet, because, you know, it's worth it for us to sort of drill down and research and figure out how you guys did versus the current team. You're batting 1,000 over there. NPR really did you a favor with that interview, and can't wait for you to come out more and more. Did I say come out? More and more with your agenda items in your focus group tested product management there, because you are the perfect example of what the Democrat Party is right now. All style, all boxes checked, absolutely no substance. And soon, just like with Kamala Harris, the American people are going to see right through every bit of it. That was fun. Yesterday was a tragic scene in Manhattan as a mass murderer took up arms and started shooting indiscriminately, murdered a cop. We've got details on that poor man's family and what a hero he was trying to save individuals. And we're learning more about the suspect. We're learning more about the details behind the shooting, what appears to be a motive. But if you work at CNN, only one thing was important last night as this story was unfolding: the race of the shooter. And they let their viewers know he was probably white, even though he wasn't. And they kept saying it even when, while sitting on social media, we all saw the picture of the suspect, and he was not very white. But at CNN, that was the most important thing they focused on. We'll show you that atrocity coming up in a second. But first, the latest news. President Trump has put out a statement on Truth Social about this horrific incident in the city that he called home for so many decades. I've been briefed on the tragic shooting that took place in Manhattan, a place that I know and love. I trust our law enforcement agencies to get to the bottom of why this crazy lunatic committed such a senseless act of violence. My heart is with the families of the 4 people who were killed, including the New York Police Department officer who made the ultimate sacrifice. God bless the New York Police Department. God bless New York. That's leadership. Let's talk about the cop who lost his life. His name is Didarul Islam, 36 years old. He has 2 kids and his wife. His wife is 8 months pregnant right now. And by the timeline and the bullet points of the account of what happened, sort of the TikTok of this crazed lunatic and his murder spree, apparently Officer Islam was the first to fall. This guy turned his gun on the cop first as soon as he turned the corner into that building, because he knew that the cop was the biggest threat. He then shot the security guard that was behind the desk. But he murdered this cop in cold blood so he could continue killing more people. This, of course, in a city where their leading candidate for mayor wants to defund the police and has gone on the record saying that when there's violent incidents, oftentimes it's better to send a social worker for the threat of violence rather than police officers. Oh, that candidate for mayor, by the way, he's taken about 10 days off and he's celebrating his wedding in Uganda, where his family at a multi-million-dollar protected compound are celebrating behind walls and a fortress with armed masked guards. That would be the Kami Mamdani, Democrat nominee for mayor. He did put out a tweet, though. He put out a message, thoughts and prayers, all that stuff. Really concerned about the cop in critical condition. Never actually mentioned the cop who was murdered, though. I hope New York is paying attention. Meanwhile, we pretty quickly got security footage of this monster as he was approaching the building. He targeted that building, it appears, based on reporting from the New York Post. He left a letter that specifically had complaints about the National Football League. The NFL, they have their offices in this building. Now, I'm told that Blackstone also has their offices in the building, and we weren't quite sure who he was targeting, if either of those organizations. But according to the New York Post, this letter does cite the NFL. He was a high school football player in Granada Hills, California. He was a running back. He wanted to have a professional career. I'm told that he did play for the Canadian Football League for a while. He was last employed as a security guard in Las Vegas. He claims in this letter, according to the New York Post, that he was suffering from CTE, which is a brain disorder that comes from playing football. Although, strangely, my understanding is that that is not officially diagnosed until, well, after you die. So he believed he had it. He also killed himself, shot himself, turned that gun on himself, and shot himself in the chest. He wanted to preserve his head because, according to the New York Post, he wanted science to study his brain and the effects of CTE. The guy was a nut, a monster. But this is the picture that we saw pretty early on in the reporting of this story as it was still unfolding. We didn't even know if we had the guy in custody or whether he had been neutralized. We knew he was in the building still. But this is what he looks like. And, you know, not to jump to conclusions or anything, but if you had to tell me what his race is, I'd say he's maybe black. There were some reports that said he might be Middle Eastern. But I don't think anybody with a brain in their head and any kind of observational skills or even a clear thought process would look at that picture and immediately say, oh, well, he's probably white. Nobody would say that. I mean, unless, of course, you're a paid expert for CNN.
Who he is?
They do not know who he is. They know he is a male, possibly white. He's wearing sunglasses. He appears to have a mustache. And that picture has been distributed to every police officer in New York City, particularly has been sent to the phones of the search teams inside that building.
John Miller, chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst. I like that intelligence is in there. Now, he referenced the photograph. He said that he's wearing glasses. I mean, he's talking about other descriptors that you can see of this guy. And he just referenced it, saying that photograph has been distributed to other people. Look at it. I mean, again, I'm not trying to racially profile here. Don't start calling me names or anything. I'm just using observational skills, and I think any sentient human being looking at that photograph is saying, yes, there are sunglasses, and he does appear to have a goatee of sorts, and he ain't white. In fact, just leave race out of it if you're not sure, but what he said, probably white? Probably? And then look at that picture. If you had to put a gun to my head, maybe not a good analogy in this case, if I had to put money on it, if I bet my life on it, I'd have to lean toward white. What? But I guess this is just the mindset when you're at the CNN headquarters, because the presumption always is that the most violent, dangerous, problematic individuals in America are white men. They say it all the time. Armed white men are the biggest problem our society faces. So that's already built in to sort of the point of view of people that work at this building.
Group of people, the first thing they have to figure out is that individual among these people hiding among victims or pretending to be an office worker? Because one thing you don't want to have happen is to have this kind of cordon where you're trying to evacuate people in groups as you can get them to a safe corridor and have this person slip out with them. So yes, they have the picture and they have distributed to everybody on the scene.
All right. John, stay with me. I know you're obviously getting information here in real time as we're talking.
Aaron Burnett also sees the picture, and that was a great opportunity for, the anchor, the host of the show for CNN to say, okay, so can I just follow up here? Did you say probably white? Because I'm looking at the picture. This is his photograph, by the way, from his job, I believe, in Las Vegas. Probably white, everybody. It's probably white. Now, later on in the evening, John Miller was still there, still cashing his check as a law enforcement expert, crime expert, intelligence analyst for CNN, and it didn't get much better.
Well, he has been identified as Shane Devin Tamura. His life starts in Hawaii as a kid. He's a football player in high school. Then he moves to Las Vegas. and he is somebody who has no significant criminal record. Thus, he was able to get licensed by the state of Nevada as a private investigator, the same way he was able to get licensed to have a concealed carry permit by the Las Vegas Metro Police Department to carry handguns.
Now, I want you to know that this segment here with Abby Phillip goes on for another couple of minutes, and John Miller is now totally read in on who this guy is. Licensed private investigator. He had a concealed carry permit in Las Vegas. He born in Hawaii, did this, did that. At no point in the segment, because this was a perfect opportunity for him to say, and by the way, Abby, I just want you to know, earlier this evening, as you know, we had a lot of moving parts and the story was still unfolding and it was sort of fog of war. We didn't have all the information. I slipped up and I erroneously said that this person is probably white. Clearly, that is not the case. And now is a great time for me to affirm what this suspect's race is. Never happened. Never happened.
So we know his name. We've looked at some of his social media and background. We've reached out to some friends. We know they are searching his apartment. And we are working on what was his connection with that building and why he went to the floor he went to.
And John,
I expect to
can I confirm something that you just confirm with you, something you just mentioned? You said his apartment. Is it your understanding that he lived in this moment in Las Vegas? Is that correct?
The address on his license that was found and the subsequent checks give him an address in Las Vegas. NYPD immediately reached out to Kevin McMahill, the Las Vegas Metro Sheriff. He immediately sent his team up to determine if there was anybody in that house, anybody that they needed to interview or talk to, and B, to lock that down to make sure that nobody went in or nobody came out with anything, because they're in the process of obtaining a search warrant to go through that place, looking for any kind of manifesto, papers, computers, and so on.
John, the fact that if in fact this shooter came from Las Vegas to New York City, talk to us about the process of obtaining a weapon like the one that he was seen carrying. I don't believe we know exactly the type of weapon in our CNN report.
So you see what they're doing now. You see, there's nothing to ask about the race. Interesting, where Abby Phillip is not saying, hey, John, can you confirm what his race is? Because earlier tonight, his race was super duper important. Had to bring it out there. But now, nada. Ixnay on the ace ray. I mean, I'm looking at the picture. We're all looking at the picture. We know his name. We know where he worked. We know what it. So, anything about the race that we should discuss, or is that okay? So instead, because the racial angle isn't there anymore, they were hoping that this was a crazy right-wing white guy who they were going to turn into, whatever demon that they want to portray on CNN, and make you tangentially responsible for this horrific crime. Now they can't do that. So now what's next? They got to pivot immediately. And where did she pivot? The gun. The gun. You see, now we can't blame him for this crime anymore because he doesn't fit the profile that we like to use when we blame criminals for their behavior. So now we have to blame the gun. Hey, get us a congressman. Do we got a congress? No, not that congressman. Give me a Democrat. Oh, good. Yeah. Bring me the Democrat. Let's talk about guns.
And I find it to be absolute insanity that we allow weapons of war to just flow freely on the streets of America. And even though New York State and New York City have the strictest gun laws in the nation, those gun laws can only take you so far if guns can easily cross state boundaries. And this is exactly what happened here.
And in New York, is your understanding that it would have been easy for him to obtain this AR-15 weapon if he purchased it here?
I think it would have been easier for him to obtain it in Nevada. I mean, we have much stricter gun laws here in New York.
Yeah.
But again, what we desperately need is a national ban on military-style weapons, because we have far too many guns in America, far too few regulations of those guns.
What does military-style weapon mean exactly? I live near the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, and I go to a lot of events at the yard there where they have parades and things, and the officers often have swords. That's a military style weapon. Their sidearms are just typical pistols and handguns. That's a military style weapon. The military literally uses it as a weapon. What the hell does he mean? And of course, she's ill-equipped to follow up and say that. What's a military? What do you mean military style weapon? Basically, any long arm rifle is going to be a military style weapon. When you, it's such a broad, amorphic, unspecific term. We need to ban military style weapons. Okay, then you're saying ban pretty much every weapon, every gun, every firearm, because every firearm could and is derivative of or a style of something that our military uses. And oh, by the way, New York City already has a ban on this specific weapon. How great did that law work for you? You know, it's a funny thing about gun laws. If you're prepared to break one of our laws in this country, you know, one of our more important laws, more serious laws, criminal laws, that is. Let me be specific. If you're willing to break the law we have against committing murder, as this person clearly was prepared to do, then you probably have already rationalized breaking our laws against owning or possessing or carrying a firearm that has been banned or made illegal. In fact, if you look at the details of this crime, when he pulled up to the building that he went into with his gun to murder people, he double parked his vehicle. Now that's against the law. We have a law against double parking. You can't do that. You might get towed. But it's a funny thing, when you're already hell-bent on murdering someone, you sort of disregard some of the smaller laws that you're going to break in the process, like double parking, or like owning a gun that Richie Torres thinks looks scary. These Democrats who constantly, while bodies are still lying in blood and loved ones still haven't been notified that they have lost their father or lost their sister in a horrific crime like that, that they have to rush to the set of CNN to immediately politicize this and divide our nation at a time where we are trying to get information and maybe even mourn the tragedy and pray for our fellow American, where they decide to immediately divide us politically on something as divisive from their perspective as the gun issue, without ever thinking this through, without actually laying out the consequences of what their ideas are. It's ghoulish behavior. And I wish they would just be honest with you, because a nationwide ban today on the guns that Richie Torres thinks are military style would actually have no impact. Let me just lay this out for you. Democrats, listen to me. You know, all of you people who keep saying we need common sense gun safety laws, which means gun control, be honest with us. Just think this through logically, everyone who's watching or listening. The only way to pass a law of any effect that will make things safer in the way that they want to make things safer is to repeal the Second Amendment and confiscate private ownership of firearms. Now, sometimes they actually say it out loud. Now, they won't say it exactly like that. You hear Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and stuff say, you know, we should take a look at what Australia did. Australia, you know, what Australia did is really smart. That's what Australia did. That's exactly what Australia did, but they won't say it. They'll just say, look at Australia. Look at Canada. Look at England. Yeah, let's look at England, where people are now getting stabbed to death on the street. And guess what the politicians are considering now in England? Knife control. We need to ban ownership of knives. It's a funny thing. No matter what the weapon is, if people want to murder, they're going to murder. I got a better idea. Enforce the laws. Protect the innocent. You know, like what we used to do in Western civilization. I would have more respect for a Democrat who comes forward and say, that's it. We got to repeal the Second Amendment, and I'm going to lead the charge to do it. And we need to confiscate firearms in this country. I mean, it'll never happen, because this is the United States of America, but at least I'd have respect that they're being honest about what they actually believe. But this pablum, grow some cojones here, Richie. Actually do something if that's what you believe. Meanwhile, CNN's lamentable display last night has created a whole host of amusing memes. For instance, this one with, I believe, a fake chyron. I could be wrong, but I think that that's a pretend chyron that tells you, superimposed over the photograph of clearly a non-white individual, it says New York City shooting suspect appears to be a white male. Somebody else tweeted out this picture of a Democrat congressman who dresses up like a woman and said, "Hey, CNN, this is what a white male looks like." I find that rather amusing. And then this one is sort of a shooting for the cycle, or no, what's the word? Hitting for the cycle in baseball. You've got in the upper left corner, that's what CNN calls a white suspect. To the right, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, that's what CNN calls a Maryland dad. Trump getting assassinated or attempted assassination is Trump fell on the stage. And over there is Joe Biden, who CNN calls sharp as a tack. That's how CNN delivers the news to you every day. I can't tell you how gratified I am that CNN is a laughingstock of anyone who follows the news on a regular basis. They deserve every bit of ridicule. And they're not alone. Somebody put together a meme to show you exactly how Netflix is going to handle the movie version of this attack. On the left is the actual murderer, but on the right is the blue-eyed white version that Netflix will ensure the rest of America sees. Some dark humor at a time of tragedy. Sometimes we need that kind of release. And of course, the family of this fallen police officer will remain in our prayers. No doubt you've seen this image out of Cincinnati from a horrific downtown beating that happened, I believe it was at a music festival. It's despicable. It's horrific. It's disgusting. The police response was nowhere to be found. Ambulance as well. It was caught on video. It went viral. We all saw what happened with our own very eyes, and it is the perfect description of the decay of any social or societal order in so many of our major cities run by Democrats, dominated by Democrats in America's major cities. But the police chief for Cincinnati, well, she held a press conference and she identified exactly who's really to blame for this horrific crime. We'll show you that in a second. But first, J.D. Vance, who has been the senator from Ohio before he became the vice president, but of course the Cincinnati area near and dear to his heart. And yesterday in Canton, Ohio, he addressed this issue.
There was a group of people who attacked a couple folks on the street in Cincinnati. Senator Bernie Moreno, some others have spoken out about it, have been critical of it.
Okay, yes. So what I saw, and I haven't seen the full context, but what I saw is a mob of lawless thugs beating up on an innocent person, and it's disgusting. And I hope every single one of those people who engage in violence is prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And they will be. They will be so long as law enforcement in the state of Ohio takes their job seriously. I know Dave Yost cares a lot about these things. But yeah, I actually, you're right. Bernie did send me a clip of this, and we talked a little bit about it. I don't know the full context. I don't know how the fight started. But the one part that I saw that was really gruesome is you had a grown man who sucker punched a middle-aged woman. And where I come from, at least, when you have a grown man who sucker punches a middle-aged woman, that person ought to go to jail for a very long time. And frankly, he's lucky there weren't some better people around, because they would have handled it themselves. But if they're not going to handle it, the cops in Cincinnati, the law enforcement, you've got to prosecute people. We've had way too much lawlessness on the streets of great American cities. How many of you all have wanted to go to downtown Akron or downtown Canton or downtown Columbus for a meal, but you're worried because the local authorities in these big cities have allowed lawlessness to run wild? We have got to make great American cities safe again for families and children. If you want to take your your wife or your children out for a meal. You shouldn't be worried about street violence, and the only way to destroy that street violence is to take the thugs who engage in that violence and throw their asses in prison.
Now, that wasn't so hard, was it? That's how real people talk, real Americans talk, real men talk. And obviously he was emotional about it, considering it was his home state. And he grew up near Cincinnati, actually, ish. So that's not hard, right? And that's the vice president of the United States, who's well removed from, you know, the day-to-day street life in the Cincinnati area where this horrific crime took place. So now let's take a look at the police chief for the great city of Cincinnati. There she is. I'm not going to judge a book by a cover. Let's hear what she has to say when she was given the opportunity to comment on the crime. Same way J.D. Vance was. J.D. Vance was just asked a question. You saw this video? What do you think? You saw what J.D. Vance said. Now, how about the actual chief of police for the city in which this crime took place?
Another topic I want to cover real quick. Social media and journalism and the role it plays in this incident. And yes, guys, that's you. That is you. Social media, the post that we've seen, does not depict the entire incident. That is one version of what occurred. At times, social media and mainstream media and their commentaries are a misrepresentation of the circumstances surrounding any given event. What that does, that causes us some difficulties in thoroughly investigating the activity and enforcing the law. Because what happens, that social media post and your coverage of it distorts the content of what actually happened. And it makes our job more difficult. Go ahead, right here.
Thank you. 2 questions.
All right, so real fast, she's going to take a question here, but did you follow that? So she's super angry that social media got a hold of the video of this event and circulated it, and people saw with their very eyes what occurred and commented on it and got upset about it and got angry about it and reached conclusions about it because she's claiming that there's more What is she talking about? What context could there possibly be that is missing from the video? This is defenseless people getting beaten up on. Is she saying that there's more to the story and they had it coming or something? I mean, seriously, there is no further context that would in any way lessen the impact of what we saw in the video. So this hectoring, this lecturing from this woman yelling at us because we happen to form opinions based on evidence that we see. I mean, listen, you can make the case. Tell us what's missing. And we're making your job harder. Oh, darling, please. You made your job just hard enough on your own. You don't need our help there. How exactly did we make your job harder? Because there's pressure on you to actually find these criminals in the lawless city that you're presiding over? We made your job more difficult. I love cops, but boy, oh boy, do I hate the politicians who run police departments.
Where were the nearest officers?
In the central business section. They were working. They were both in vehicles. And like I said, they had to maneuver through the traffic.
My second question is, you had said social media, news media distorted the content of what actually happened. What exactly was distorted? I understand that there was multiple views of the video, but exactly what led up to this? I mean, what was distorted?
Yeah, so I think by the irresponsibility with social media is it just shows one side of the equation quite frequently without context, without factual context. And then people run with that. And then it grows legs and it becomes something bigger that we then have to try to manage as part of the investigation.
So what's the context? She was just given the perfect opportunity. Fill in the blanks here. What are we missing on the story? And she just repeated what she said because it makes it her job harder. Yeah, what it does is it puts pressure on her to actually do her freaking job. That's what she's angry about. Oh, come on, this is downtown Cincinnati. This sort of thing happens all the time. If it's not on camera, then there's no pressure on her to actually do something about it. But yeah, somebody had to have a smartphone and they had to post a video of it. And now we got to go out and get something done. And I got to answer all these pesky questions about why there were no cops around and why people were lying unconscious for an interminable amount of time after that unacceptable behavior. Yeah, that's what she means by making her job harder. Well, how she should be fired. She should be fired. Meanwhile, the mayor of Cincinnati. What the hell is going on in Cincinnati? Here's a statement from Mayor Aftab Puraval. I'm outraged by the vicious fight that occurred downtown. It's horrifying to watch, and this unacceptable and disgusting behavior is intolerable in any part of our community. That's not who we are as a city. Okay. There's more. Since the fight occurred, I've been in constant communication with Chief Theach. And our police have been working around the clock to investigate and bring perpetrators of violence to justice. Based on the investigation and the urgent work of our police, I'm confident that arrests are forthcoming. For that reason, we're making every effort to allow our officers to do their job and present formal results to the public rather than engaging with early speculation. Oh, see here again, you people, you behave yourself. Stop it with all your opinions. How dare you? Don't you know who we are? Let me be clear. Oh, when a politician says, let me be clear, it's always a red flag. Let me be clear. Cincinnati is an inclusive city where all can come together to enjoy major events in our urban core. You know what he's saying, right? White people, don't be afraid to come to Cincinnati, is what he's saying. That's what he's saying. He's terrified that this is going to hurt businesses, concerts, baseball games downtown. That's what he's trying to say. Please, white people, don't be afraid. You can come down here. You're not going to get beat up. The police will protect you. Except, of course, when you look at that video, it sure looks like the opposite occurred. This is sad. You want to make us feel confident that we can go downtown in Cincinnati? Arrest these thugs and start increasing police presence. I would love for. I wish I had searched this. Where did he stand on defund the police? Where did he stand on Black Lives Matter? Did he take a knee in the summer of 2020? I'd love to know. What do you think? Based on our information, this incident was not connected to Cincinnati Music Fest, the local Reds game, the Big Three tournament, or any of the large events that took place over the weekend. You see what he's saying? I want to thank our law enforcement for the thorough work. Thorough? Really? How many have been arrested, Mayor? How thorough has it been? Both to investigate this incident and to keep folks safe throughout our city this weekend. Well, it wasn't too thorough. I don't think everybody was kept safe, Mayor. Bernie Moreno, the Republican senator newly elected to the state of Ohio, says Cincinnati Mayor waits over 2 days to issue a poll-tested statement. I've been in touch with all the victims. They haven't heard a word from the mayor or their congressman. So think about that for a minute. The mayor is so outraged by what he saw. You remember the first paragraph here? Horrifying to watch, unacceptable, disgusting behavior, intolerable in any part of our community. That's not who we are as a city. But he never picked up the phone to reach out to the victims and express his sympathy. No, he called his political consultants. Said, I got to say something. I'll try to get something out Tuesday morning. Help me out here. Oh, I'm sorry. He got it out yesterday afternoon. Outrageous. Absolutely disgusting. And it's kind of a Rorschach test for people. You know, the ink blot, where everyone will look at this thing and they'll come up with their own conclusions. But I don't quite see what the police chief is saying with regard to the lack of context here. What context is missing? I don't know who I'm more disgusted by. Well, I am disgusted, obviously, by the people who are perpetrating this violence on these innocent people. But I am additionally, I don't want to say equally, but additionally and tangentially as horrified by the other people who are standing there and taking video of it, laughing about it, and cheering it on. And I know that a lot of people want to inject race into it, and I understand why, when race is obviously at the center of this story in terms of what we see with our own eyes. And I get that. I do. I saw this video and my initial instinct had less to do with race than it had to do with the incompetence of the people running our major cities right now, which have become a cesspool of crime and criminal vagrancy and lawlessness, where you've got woke mayors and woke district attorneys who were not prosecuting crimes, who were attempting to defund the police and inject social justice reforms into the criminal justice system because they usually win office by claiming that America is inherently and systematically racist, and they have to be elected to fix the problem. And their solution to fixing the problem is to let criminals run free. We see it all the time. I see this as the failure of American governance in our major cities that have been overtaken by Democrats. And the lecture that you just got from the mayor in his letter and from the police chief there really has to do with race, because people respond to this and say, oh, white people aren't safe in Cincinnati. White people will not be protected in Cincinnati. There are criminal black mobs running around Cincinnati, preying on innocent white people, and the police and the elected officials won't do anything to help you. And when you watch this video, you'd be forgiven for reaching that conclusion, because it's a reasonable conclusion to reach. And for everybody wagging their finger at you and telling you, how dare you reach some sort of racial perspective on this or conclusion on this, that makes you racist in and of yourself. No, it's not racist to take a look at people involved in this crime and notice that the victims are white and the perpetrators are black, and the people videoing and cheering it on and laughing at it are also black. That doesn't mean all black people are criminals. It means in this case, there is a racial element to this. And forgive us for recognizing that when we've just been told for the last decade plus that our criminal justice system is systemically racist and that those wrongs have to be corrected. And the way we're going to do it is by defunding the police and letting criminals roam free and not punish them to the full extent of the law, because that's the policy that's been enacted for the last several years. And now we're seeing the end results of it. Whenever you hear about a Soros-funded prosecutor who is not enforcing the law, prosecuting people, letting them out on no cash bail, and not taking crime seriously, they're always framing those policy decisions that makes life less livable in these major cities. They're framing those policy decisions within the context of, we have to right the past racial wrongs of our society, because America is, say it with me, systemically racist. 100% of the time, that's always what's said. So I'm sorry, you don't get away with saying that without some of us reacting to it when we see something like this, saying, yeah, all that race that you guys constantly focus on all the time, and it affects your policies for how we live in our cities, this is the net result of it. And something's got to change. The federal government often looks at cities and states and other municipalities where crimes take place, and if justice is not served, and in the opinion of the Justice Department, justice is not served for some sort of discriminatory reason, oftentimes due to race, well, then they conduct a federal investigation into the incident. And we are told now that the FBI is, in fact, now investigating this brawl in Cincinnati. They're already interviewing suspects down there. Why? Why are the feds in there? Because they have reached the conclusion that the local district attorney, the mayor, and clearly the police chief are incapable of doing so in a fair and unbiased way that focuses on justice. You remember justice. She's the chick with the scales, and she wears a blindfold for a reason. Next up, Kevin. This year marks the 90th anniversary of an American institution, something that affects all of us, something that we rely upon, and something that, strangely, a lot of people don't know a whole lot about with regard to its origins and whether it's actually going to be around for us in the future. Maybe you've guessed what I'm talking about. Social Security. That's right, 90 years. And Social Security has actually gone through a bit of an evolution, and it might be going through another evolution sometime soon. To keep it there for us, let's bring on an expert on this. He is the Senior Vice President of Campaigns for the American Association of Retired Persons. Yes, that's right. I got that mailer myself recently. You reach that age, and suddenly you're there for AARP. It's John Ishta. John, thanks for joining us. Do you hear that a lot? It's like, oh, I just
all the time.
I just got something in the mail. It's like this rite of passage. It's like that's
exactly.
It. You're officially one of those older people, I guess.
And you know what I tell people, Larry? I tell people you need to embrace it.
That's right. It ain't going away. So you might as well. So 90 years. Let's go into the history a little bit, because I think people don't realize that when Social Security was first envisioned and created, it was obviously a very different time, and it was designed for a very specific purpose, wasn't it?
It sure was. It was actually the 90th anniversary is August 14th of this year. So that's when President Roosevelt signed it into being. And in those days, it was designed to be a supplemental income program for retirement folks as they aged out of the workforce. And over the years, as more and more people lost pensions and things of that nature, it's become a bigger proponent for a lot of people of their income when they retire. It just, unfortunately for a lot of folks, it's the majority of their income because they didn't have access or don't have access to other retirement options through their work or through personal means.
Is it true that when it was first envisioned, it was specifically for widows and women who didn't have sort of their husband or a man in life? It's a different era. Everyone, don't get mad at me.
Yep.
But that was the perspective, that you had all these women who were sort of left with nothing, and they were destitute.
Well, it was both for that as well as the folks who were going to retire. And if you recall, in those days as well, the retirement age was such that people weren't living as long as they are today either. And so when it was originally set up, the length that people were on Social Security was only a few years, whereas nowadays, people live so much longer. And so the program, accounts for a lot more years for a lot of people in retirement once they reach that age.
Life expectancy was not very far beyond that retirement age.
And some people never even made it to, be able to accept Social Security benefits when they retired at that point.
And so, and you talked about the fact that it was there for people who didn't have other investment vehicles, but then something happened over the years where, you hear some people talk about sort of planning for their retirement, thinking, well, Social Security will take care of me. And so instead of a supplement, they started to rely on this as sort of the beginning, middle, and end of their income for Social Security.
Well, if you think about it, how much life has changed over the past even 40 or 50 years with respect to the workforce. Most people had the ability to collect a pension at one point in the game, and that pretty much has gone by the wayside. With the advent of the 401ks that people can pay into with their workforce, even a lot of folks today don't have access to 401ks through their workforce across the country. And so more and more people have come to rely on Social Security for the majority of their income. Today, 40% of the people on Social Security say that is literally the majority of their income they get in retirement. And for 15% of the people on Social Security, it's literally the only income they get.
Yeah. And when people in Washington, D.C. start recognizing the mathematical realities of how the trust fund operates, whether it's funded, how long it will be funded, and they start, floating the ideas of maybe we got to make some changes. Oftentimes you hear people who rely on Social Security saying, oh, hell no, don't touch my Social Security. I paid into it. A promise was made to me, and I expect to have it. But is that really how the numbers work? I mean, how many people actually are taking out of Social Security well more than what they put into it? And is that okay?
Well, I mean, over the years, much like anything else, you want people to have a reasonable retirement and the ability to pay their bills, live independently, and hopefully age with dignity over the years. And so from a mathematical perspective, the program was originally set up for people who pay into it while they're working so that it's there on the back end for them when they do retire. And so it's not strictly a pay-as-you-go system, but at the same time, it provides a modest income, particularly for those working folks who don't have anything else. And so one of the problems is, though, that the amount of workers who pay into it as a percentage of the people who accept it has gone down. So originally it was 4 or 5 to 1 workers paying into for every person who collected. Now it's almost down to 2.5 to 1. So that's an issue that has to be dealt with.
In the first couple of months of the Trump administration, Elon Musk's focus with the Department of Government Efficiency looked at some of what sounded like incredible gross inefficiencies at Social Security, how checks were handled, the administrative aspects of that. And there were a lot of concerns about revamping those systems or whether there were privacy concerns. Where does that project stand right now? And do you agree that it does require some sort of upgrade to efficiencies?
Well, I think all government needs to be modernized when it comes to how we look at systems across the board, whether it's in the Social Security Administration or the Department of Defense or Department of Agriculture. What I would say, though, is that when you look at doing these things within Social Security and how the administration conducts itself, you really need to take into consideration how it affects folks who are on Social Security and need to get access to some of their records on Social Security. And so some of the things that the Social Security Administration has put forth with respect to eliminating some of the options with phone systems and things of that nature really could become egregious for folks in certain parts of the country, and there's a transition period that needs to be taken into consideration with some of these things as well. A lot of folks who are in their 80s really don't have access or the ability to go online like you and I do, Larry, and really understand how to make changes themselves. And they rely on making a phone call and talking to a live person and making sure that they get done what they need to get done. That can be done with a lot of safeguards in place. And so with the new administrator there, we're hoping that as we move forward and we modernize things, that he continues to take into account the effects of any changes that come forward.
Well, that's good because a lot of people look at this program as they look at a lot of government programs. And yes, they need to make it more efficient and make it secure. But it almost feels like there hasn't been a big focus on trying to solve some of the fraud problems. And there are definitely instances of Social Security fraud. So how do you?
Well, I would say I get that there may be some fraud, but it's very limited, very limited. So it's against the law.
Because we saw reports of people who apparently were like on the rolls that are 250 years old, right?
Yeah, but they weren't receiving Social Security checks. So, that was, yes, some of the rolls needed to be fixed and they were cleaned up, but nobody, who was purported to be 150 years old was receiving a check. And I think that, that needs to be stated pretty clearly. Okay. From that perspective, the amount of fraud in Social Security is very, very, very small in relation to the rest of the organization. And so I think that they recognize that they're getting a handle on that aspect of it, but at the same time, making sure that there are safeguards in place moving forward.
So the projection right now, according to the trustees, is that in a little less than a decade, there's going to be a serious problem, a serious crunch. And, you know, if anybody knows about like union pension funds or other, you know, pension and retirement funds that are under ERISA and other federal regulations, the trustees would be in trouble if they allowed this situation to occur, that you were this close to being insolvent. So what needs to be done here? And can it be done? Because it needs to be done by politicians who don't want to make anybody angry.
Well, of course it can be done. We just have to have some politicians on both sides of the aisle who are courageous enough to tackle the issue before it becomes too late. The problem is that, as you know, Social Security is set up as a trust fund. People pay into it with the Social Security taxes as part of their regular paycheck. For employees, that's 6.2%. For employers, that's 6.2%. What has happened, though, over time is, as I suggested, the amount of money going into the trust fund is starting to not keep up with the people who are receiving the benefits. And so by the year 2033 or 2034, depending on who you talk to, if nothing changes, the trust fund at that point in the game will only be able to pay 80% of the current benefits for folks on Social Security. So that would be the equivalent of a 20% pay cut. It doesn't mean the program's going away. It doesn't mean that the program is going bankrupt. It simply means that there is a hole that needs to be fixed for current beneficiaries moving forward. And there are a variety of options on the table to do that. You also have to take into consideration that politics comes into play here, and you need elected officials on both sides of the aisle who are willing to step up and deal with this before it's too late. There are a variety of ways to find additional revenue to put into the system. Congress has dealt with bigger issues before. President Trump has stated that he wants to preserve and protect Social Security for the long run. Even he has come out and said that we shouldn't be messing around with the retirement age at this point in the game. So both sides of the aisle need to come to the table and say, here are some options.
Could it be solved with a phased approach? I mean, we began talking about the history of it and the fact that the life expectancy was only a few years after. Now, last report I saw, a married couple in retirement, the odds are 50-50 that at least one of them will make it to the age 90. So is there a way to phase that retirement age for generations? Like, for instance, if you're 45 or older now, you're still locked in. But for people who are in their 20s now, you start pushing it back for people who are just starting in the workforce.
Well, I don't think right now that that's an option. But also what I would say is we need to take into consideration folks who aren't like you and me. You know, I sit at a desk most of the day for my work as you do, but there are a lot of working Americans out there who frankly bust their butt day in and day out, whether it's for, you know, a utility company or construction work or things of that nature. And they're in no position to, you know, retire later in life. You know, they may need access to that Social Security benefit, maybe even earlier than the current age, which is 67. And so we would also like to see members of Congress and the president look at revenue options. You know, there are multiple ways to handle that as well. And if you go back into the history of Social Security, for instance, back in the 30s, almost everyone basically was paid through their W-2, whereas nowadays, you know, there's a lot of passive income that's just simply not taxed when it comes to the Social Security Trust Fund. There's also a limit on the amount of money that can be taxed on Social Security. I think the cap is around $167,000 a year. You know, you could eliminate that cap or increase it substantially and take care of a lot of the problem as it is right now.
Well, it's a challenging issue that needs to be addressed, and that's why we like to bring it up here and deliver as much information as we can so our audience can reach their own conclusions. And you helped us in that task today, so I appreciate you joining us. And it's not going away. This is definitely a conversation that's going to be happening for quite some time. Now, if you all want more information about this and you want to reach out, and by the way, you can just text John directly, and he'll answer.
Exactly.
you have. But the first step is to go to the website there and get some more information about Social Security, where it stands right now, what's in play. So let me get that website for you. It's aarp.org/we earned it. There it is. aarp.org/we earned it. And you'll get a whole font of information to help you reach your conclusions as well. John, thanks. Really informative stuff. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Larry. Always a pleasure.
You bet. That concludes this segment and this edition of Larry. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. You know that. Same time, same place. And in the meantime, my name is Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.